Hello and welcome. I am Light and this is my channel. Today I'm going to tell you a story that I've never told before. In fact, there are less than a handful of people in my life that even know this story. It is how I came to know a child murderer through an online parenting group. A mother. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to be seen, which helps it to be recommended, and that really helps the channel. If you are not subscribed and you would like to be, please subscribe and set your notifications so that you are notified every time my content goes live. All right, let me tell you my story. So, when I was pregnant with my third child, I decided to join a parenting group online. It was a way to connect with other mothers. It was a way to have support from people who are going through the exact same thing as you at the exact same time as you, because we were all due in the same month. So we could talk about our concerns, our fears, our doctor's appointments, complain about our hips, how much our feet had grown, just support. Well, that group morphed into another group, which wasn't just parents who were due to have a baby in the same month, but we all had children pretty close to the same age. And in that group, there was about 200 people. There still is. We still have that group. After all these years, our children are now adults, and we met during a lot of our pregnancies. So that's how this gets started. At the time, there was only moms. At this point, we do have one dad. But in general, it was what is commonly referred to as a mommy group. A lot of us have met in person. There are get-togethers. We know each other pretty darn well. We've been through the good times and the bad times, and the amount of time it takes from a pregnancy to an adult child. Well, there was a woman in this group, and her name was Lissa. She was just like the rest of us. She was there for the support. Lissa had 11 children. 4 of her own biological children, and then the rest were adopted, and they were special needs children. They were all African American children that she had adopted, and she talked about her family a lot. Having 11 kids was a hard job. Nothing seemed unusual. She talked about her husband. She talked about her children. She was a loving, caring mother. Now, we joke, although it's also partly serious, about being careful about who you meet on the internet, because you never know if they're a killer, an axe murderer, a serial killer, right? And you do. You have to be careful. You can't put out a lot of information, all of your information, because it can be dangerous. Especially if someone like me who, if you've been here for a while, you know that I'm a chatterbox. But to a certain extent, we all felt like we have a pretty good grasp on who people are, their personalities, their likes, their dislikes, their temperament, and their children. We talk a lot about our children, obviously, and their personalities, their accomplishments, and you can see people's personalities come through. We talk about where we live. course, now that it's been going on this long, we know a great deal more about each other's personal lives. We've been through divorces and remarriages and affairs, the birth of other children, you name it, deaths, spousal death. Sometimes we've had the suicide of a couple of our members. We feel like friends, not friends you met on the internet, not friends that are imaginary. We don't turn off our computers and stop thinking about these people when they're going through something horrific, something heartbreaking. You think about them. We raise money for Christmases, especially when the children were young, for people who were going to have a rough year that year. We donate money to widows. We send money and gift cards to people who are having a bumpy time. And, the last 2 years of 2020, I think we're still in 2020, right? Feels like it. The last 2 years of COVID have been particularly hard mentally, emotionally, financially on a lot of people. But there's always been times that we had to come together and support one another. And that's what we do. Calling it a mommy group is really degrading. It really simplifies what these groups are for. 24 hours a day, you can get on to your mommy group and talk to somebody. These friends live worldwide. These friends are scattered everywhere. So at nearly any given time, if you need somebody to speak to, there's somebody there. We have all given our phone numbers so that if somebody is down, if somebody thinks they just can't go on one more day, that there's somebody that they can call anytime, 24 hours a day, or text just to say, listen, can you sit with me? We are friends, and I can't really press that enough, because with the friendship comes a level of trust. You trust that what the people are saying is accurate. You trust that they're not lying to you. You trust that you do know their children. You trust that Adam did graduate with honors, or Casey did fall and bust one of her teeth out in kindergarten. We see the pictures. We see their vacations. We see little snippets into their lives. And we trust. We trust that not only that they're saying the truth, but we trust that when we tell our truth, that it'll be believed. And that there will be somebody who understands. Out of a group of over 200 women, there's at least one person who probably has experience with something you've been going through, right? If not many more, but at least one person. Sometimes we can ask the most random health questions, or any question, and you'll be shocked that there's somebody who knows the answer to that. And that's what we do. That's why we're there. We're there for support. And that's why Lissa was there. She was there for support through her pregnancies, support through raising 11 children, several of them being special needs children. Many people can relate to that. Many people can understand that the special needs children she adopted weren't just physical special needs, but also emotional, psychological special needs. And many of us have our own family members, our own children, our own experiences with the same things that she was going through, she was experiencing. We thought we knew her. We thought we trusted her. We thought she was a good mother. We thought she was all of the things that she wasn't. She began telling stories on the parenting group of abuse. Abuse by her husband. Abuse by a child. She even told a story once of, I can't say the word, but being raped. And it was traumatic. And we comforted her. And some of the things she was saying, you just don't. Support is a given, but you feel like you can't do enough, right? If somebody comes to you and tells you about being raped by particularly a family member, you give as much support as you can, but many people do not and understand that or have gone through that situation. And her situation began to sound more dire. And the more dire her situation seemed to become, the more we rallied around her and supported her. It was clear that her mental stability was at risk. It was clear that she was in distress. And then one day, she vanished. She no longer posted on the support group. We didn't know why she was gone. We didn't know where she'd gone to. And we wondered. And then somebody who lived close to her saw something in the news that shook our foundation, that brought to mind that you can't trust people online, right? That you have to be careful because you don't know if they're a murderer, serial killer. Lisa's husband, Donald, was at home one day when the police came to do a well care visit because the family had been calling social services and the police department about one of their children. His name was Timothy, and he was 10 years old. He was a special needs child. And they hadn't seen him in weeks, in months, in 2 years. And they finally were desperate enough to ask for help. Something seemed wrong. The police spoke to Donald. He told them that the boy was in Michigan and he was fine. Lissa was gone. Lissa had taken her children, 10 of them, and left the state. Then Donald's story changed to the child had fallen down the stairs, hit his head, and he had died. And for whatever reason, they didn't report it. Lissa was eventually found with her 10 children. The children were put into foster care. One of them went to live with a family member. Then Donald went to the police and he confessed, and he said the child had not fallen down the stairs. He had beaten him and he had died. Donald was 37 years at the time, and Lissa was 33 years old. And as more details of the story came out, the more horrifying, horrific, frightening, unbelievable the details became. Donald and Lissa had moved into her mother's house, and when the police served a warrant and took things out of the house, they took cages meant for dogs. They took padlocks. They took 2 nightsticks used for beatings. They took electrical cords and blankets. Donald had told the police that sometimes Timothy could cause problems. The truth began to come out. The African American children were called racial slurs on a regular basis. The children had been conditioned when they heard the words, "get in the cage," that they would get in the cage. Donald told the police that his son had been drugged with Doxil and then beaten. He had been tied to a folding chair with zip ties around his ankles, around his wrists, around his neck, with a cord attaching to a bookshelf. At first, Lissa wasn't arrested for this. She was, however, a flight risk, and they did keep her in jail because they needed her to testify against Donald. It was found that Lissa had been severely abused. She had been beaten. She had been raped, including one time with a metal flashlight. All of the children had seen the abuse. They all agreed that it happened. Her life had been threatened many times, and not only her life, but he controlled her by telling her that if she didn't do what he wanted, he would kill her children, her mother, her friends. But at this point, she hadn't been implicated in the actual murder. She was admitted to a psychiatric ward where her children were allowed to visit her. And then we found out when she pled guilty to 4 counts that she had been involved in the beating death of her child. She had drugged him. She had beat him. That they had dug up the basement floor, put his 10-year-old body in it, covered it over with concrete, and installed new flooring. When Timothy was dug up by the police, they found him wrapped in a blanket. His body was so decomposed that they couldn't tell for sure how he had died, but x-rays showed that he had many, many broken bones, freshly broken, in the process of healed, and those were healed, and his teeth knocked out. What had he done wrong? Well, According to Lissa and the kids, he was locked in a room as punishment. He punched a hole in the wall to try and crawl out so he could escape the horror house that he lived in. And his punishment was that his mother and his father drugged him, beat him, killed him. Donald said that he left him in the chair and went upstairs, and when he came back later, he was dead. And they lived in the same house with their children for 2 more years. In those 2 years, his mother, not one time, called the police. She didn't one time call CPS. She never tried to get help for her son so that he could rest in peace. She lived in that house. When she was put in jail, she divorced her husband and got married to an inmate. Yeah, an inmate. Her husband, ex-husband, is serving life in prison. He'll never see the light of day. Lissa was paroled from prison on August 22nd, 2022, after she served 18 years for brutally murdering her son, her 10-year-old son. Her only job in the whole world was to protect him. They got money from the state to help support these children that had the disabilities, which I can assume was part of their reason for adopting so many children. And after they killed Timothy, they continued to take his money. Of course they did. Lissa was released from the Iowa Correctional Institute for Women. She had been given 50 years, but was eligible for parole after 17 and a half years. She had been turned down for parole twice before. Now Lissa gets to continue her life as a free woman. She has many years left to live. Her son does not. And he died in a horrific, unimaginable way. But she is free in Iowa. Thank you for coming to this channel. And good night.